Well, if you would turn in your Bibles where we left off last time in Romans chapter 10. Romans chapter 10. I'm teaching about releasing your faith. Faith doesn't do any good just to have faith until you turn your faith loose. It doesn't do any good to have power unless you turn power loose. It doesn't do any good to have love unless you turn love loose. So whatever it is that we have has no power, it has no efficacy for us until we actually turn it loose. If you think you love somebody, you don't know whether you love them until you can turn them loose. And there's a liberating power in just being able to turn whatever you have loose, and it begins to work a tremendous work. Money doesn't do you any good to have money. Money can only do you good when you turn it loose. And so whatever it is, if you've got a need, and then if you've got money, and then you keep bragging to folks, I've got money, but you've got a need, until you turn that money loose and exchange it for the thing that you have the need over, then you'll never be blessed just because you have money. There are people that have it and are miserable with it. And there are people that have power, but they don't know how to use it. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so we have to give it away. Life is designed that from the time that you're born to the time that you die, you're producing stuff that God intended for you to give away. Isn't it interesting how God could gift you as a person? He put gifts and talents and abilities on the inside of you. And you know, your life can be such an incredible blessing to somebody else. And then you'll be sitting at home by yourself in your bed, curled up, sucking your thumb, crying yourself to sleep. And you're gifted and you've blessed other people and made other people feel good, and then now you are sitting there in the fetal position. You gifted. You've given other people words of encouragement, and now you sitting at home discourage yourself. Isn't it amazing how what God gave us is not really designed for us? It's designed to flow from us, but it's not designed for us. And so that in turn means that whatever God has designed for us, He's actually placed it in someone else. And we don't become fulfilled until that other entity then releases from them what they have for us. But until there is a release, life operates on a principle of exchange. Exchange is the basis of life. Exchange is the basis of life. We are constantly exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's a process of constant exchange. We're constantly exchanging. Plants are giving off what we need, and we are giving off what they need. And so there is a process of exchange. It is an ebb and flow. It's a constant exchange. But you don't get blessed by hoarding something. You get blessed by releasing it, by giving your love, by sharing whatever it is that you have. And so you can have faith locked into your bosom, but until your faith is exchanged for that other thing that you desire, it won't do you any good. We all know from from Hebrews 11, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Another version says that faith is the title deed. It is the title deed. And you can't live in a title deed. Just because you have a title deed to something doesn't mean that it provides immediate shelter. But you can exchange the title deed for something that does mean something. You ever notice these places that say, you know, you keep the car, give us the title? And I tell you a secret, when you turn over the title, you turn over the power. You don't own the car anymore when you turn it over. Life operates on a basis of exchange. And when we have the faith of the living God on the inside of us, it needs to be released into our situations in order for it to do any good on our behalf. And we've pointed out that the very first way to release it is through declaration. Say declaration. That's why faith always says something. Faith always says something. There is a declaration of faith. Whosoever shall say, Mark 11:23, whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, those things that she saith shall come to pass, then he or she shall have whatsoever he says. Whatever she says, as a power in actually declaring the word of the Lord. So it comes through confession. Confession is a declaration of Christ. And we notice here in Romans chapter 10, verse 9, that if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. There's a power in just confession. You can't believe it. You've got to confess it with your mouth. Confess it. You know why? Because you are only committed to what you confess. If you don't ever tell anybody I'm going on a diet, you're not committed to the diet. You are only committed to what you confess. If you tell somebody that I'm going to do something, the moment that you said that you're going to do it, it is your confession then that can get you incarcerated. Your confession. When a person says, I did it. The moment that you open your mouth and confess something. Back in the old days, they really understood something more about the power of confession than what we understand today. Because a man's word was his bond. And now people will tell you something, and it doesn't mean two dead flies. I mean, they'll even sign the name on a paper and be on the contract with you, over stuff, and just lying like a dog. Isn't it amazing? But you're only committed to what you confess, and that's why you can't just believe it in your heart. You need to confess it. And remember, whatever God places in your heart, particularly if it is something that is righteous, something that is good, something that is honest, something that is true, something that is praiseworthy, you ought to speak it out. Whatever good feelings or thoughts that God places in your heart toward another human being, let me tell you this, they can always make room for another compliment or another word of encouragement. So if God puts it in your heart, it automatically means somebody needs to hear it. I've seen relationships lost because another party felt that they were being taken for granted. Not because the person didn't feel like the other person honestly didn't have a true feeling of love for them in their heart, but they never expressed it. I dealt with one man, and because his marriage was practically in ruins, his wife wanted to hear the words that she was loved. And you know what the man's confession to me was? He said, I told her 37 years ago when I married her that I loved her, and he said it still stands. I didn't see any need to repeat myself. And that was his opinion about the whole matter. He said it still stands. There's no need for me to say it again. I don't know. I done told you once. There is a power, a tremendous power in just confessing, declaring. You release something out of your mouth that changes the atmosphere just by what you say. You ever had a person say something, you in a good mood, and then they said the wrong thing, something nasty, accuse you of something? Or they begin to confess things in broad sweeping terms. You know what that means, broad sweeping term? You never help me. You always. Using words like never and always, those, you have to be very, very careful about using those terms in a relationship. Because the moment that you say never, their mind is going to go to the exception of every time that they said, no, I remember 3 times. If you say you always do such and such, then they'll point out the exceptions of the time when they didn't do it. So you have to be very, very careful about your confession. Even right here in Romans 10:17, so then faith comes by hearing. Now, that means if it's hearing, that means somebody's doing speaking. Somebody is doing the confession. Somebody is doing the declaration. I was over in Britain a few months ago, and there's a curator of a butterfly museum in South Wales that talks about a moth with no mouth. There is a species of moth that has no mouth. Now listen to this. It's where it is a unique species of a caterpillar. This caterpillar lays its egg and then changes into a moth that has no digestive system. It has no way of taking in food, and so it starves to death in a few hours. Now, nature designed this particular caterpillar to do that, to reproduce and lay its egg and pass on the life of the species. And once it was done, it had no other reason to go on living, so it was programmed to die. And when you have no mouth, this was the moth with no mouth because it had no digestive system at all. And it would go from a caterpillar into a moth with no mouth and would only live a few hours because it ran out of energy and died. And you don't know the people that die because they don't open their mouth. And they can't get anything in, and there's no way of digesting anything. Somebody, it's not only that your mouth needs to speak things out for others to digest, your mouth has to receive something in that somebody else has given. And there's a need both ways. It's of that comes out. There's a tremendous power in just the confession of the word. Now I want you to notice something over in Mark chapter 5, St. Mark chapter 5. Turn over to Mark chapter 5. I'm going to give you method number 2 of how to actually release your faith. Mark chapter 5. Remember that there is an intuition when God is leading us. And I've taught you that intuition means inner teacher. There's an inner teacher. Have you ever noticed how God can lead you as he led Abraham by faith? Abraham is considered the father of our faith, isn't he? And not only was his faith so tremendous that he is the father, the progenitor of 3 major religions of the world: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. All of them revere and respect and see Abraham as a father of the faith for them. And it's interesting that when God spoke to this man who was born in the midst of pagan people and said, "Get up from Ur of Chaldees and go into a land that I will show you." Have you ever noticed that when God speaks to you, God's word to you is always in general terms? God, when he gives you a vision, when God speaks to you, rarely will he ever give you the specifics of the how. He'll just give you a vision, and he will not tell you how to get this thing done. God will tell you to do something, won't tell you how to do it. I mean, he's a God who's a big God, and he knows the detail. Now, he knows the detail. I believe that one reason that he doesn't discuss the details with us is because the devil lives in the detail, and that's where we're going to get aggravated and frustrated, so he doesn't talk about the detail. When he shows you your prince in shining armor, he's not going to show you the issues that your prince is dealing with. I mean, so, you'll just think that I'm going to get married and live happily ever after. And so there are a lot of things that he's just not going to show you. Isn't it amazing? God will tell you to do something. God will say, "I want you to open a school." And where am I going to get the money? Lord, how do I get funding for this thing? The Lord will tell you, I'm giving you a business. And that's all he's giving you, just some floating word. The Lord has said, hey, I see millionaire. Excuse me, Lord, I could use a little more detail if you can just, Has somebody ever given you a word, that said you're going to be blessed? This is what I really love. I love the specificity of this. It's coming soon. Isn't it amazing that when God is dealing with you about something, you don't just get it instantly? There is this nebulous nature of it. You know why? Because the just shall walk by and not by. And so if he told you everything ahead of time, you would be doing it by the facts instead of by the faith. And God has called us to live this journey by faith. God, it's just like you'll slip up and have a child and you won't even know how in the world I'm going to take care of this child. It's like, Lord, I was struggling with the last one. Why you let this happen to me? And the Lord is like, I'm with you. You go and I'm with you. And you've got all of these general terms that God gives us. And when Abraham was to take his only son, isn't it amazing how God will ask you for the very thing you love? Why didn't he ask for Ishmael? I mean, Ishmael was already born, but he never asked for Ishmael. He asked for what was really close to his heart. He asked for his Isaac. He said, give me Isaac. Isaac was the very promise that he'd waited on all of his life. God never gave him the details of exactly what he was going to do with him. And now he's looking around, trying to find, God, I've got to go now and offer him up somewhere. And God told him, just get up and go. And he started out early in the morning. And he went to a place where he had no idea where he was going. Have you ever gone to a place? I know that I've been in a store and people will come up and ask me, sir, can I help you find anything? And I said, no, I'm just looking. And then they may come back a few minutes later because I'm still looking. And they said, well, you're looking for anything in particular? And I say to myself, no, I'm not, I'm just looking. But I'm looking in a way that I'll know it when I see it. Have you ever been there? That you couldn't exactly explain to people what you were looking for, but you'll know it when you see it. And I believe that this is the way that God led Abraham. It's Abraham, you'll know it when you see it. Get up and just follow me and you'll know it when you see it. Now I will tell you this. One thing that you'll clearly know, you'll know what it ain't. You ever get people that come in your life and you're wondering, is this the one? And you can really discern you are not the one. I mean, you can say with an emphatic certainty that I know he didn't send me you. I mean, you'll know that. Now, you'll be still looking for Mr. Right or Miss Right, whichever one. You'll still be looking for the right one, but you will automatically know who is the wrong one. It'll be one of those kinds of leadings of God where you will know it when you see it. And in this kind of vague, nebulous leading by God, Abraham says, servants, you stay here while I go yonder. Isn't it amazing that there are sometimes things that have served you can only go to a certain point in your life, and they'll never be able to go any further. There are some things when worship is so intimate, it is so personal that nobody working for you, serving with you, your buddies, nobody can do it for you. Mama can't do your praising for you. Daddy can't worship for you. Preacher can't worship for you. Sunday school teacher. Nobody else can worship for you. Nobody else can worship for you. You can't send anybody else. You can't say, well, I'm busy this week and I'm going to pay somebody to go and do that in my place. Any more than you can have somebody to go to the restroom for you or have somebody to eat a meal for you. And so it is a matter of where once you get to the place, there is a knowing from your inner teacher that I'm here in this place, and God will lead you. He'll lead you. He'll lead you, and you'll be able to discover him. Now, I was just sharing that with you while you were finding Mark chapter 5. Let's look at verse 24. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. And now a certain woman had a flow of blood of 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. But when she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. And immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." Now, one of the reasons that Jesus didn't just allow this woman to touch him and get a healing and then run off in obscurity is because he wanted this woman to know that this was not just a superstition that just happened here. This was not a happenstance. He said to the woman, "Woman, daughter, your faith has made you whole." Now, how is it that when the disciples witnessed that there was a multitude thronging Jesus, touching him, and nothing was happening to them? So what is it about this woman that allows her to touch Jesus, and when she touches him, power is released from him? Power comes from him. Now, there's got to be something special about this particular power that comes from Jesus that allows him. He couldn't even stop the power from leaping out of him, and she felt in her body that she was healed. The fountain of her blood was immediately dried up. She activated something by her faith, and Jesus said, "Your faith, daughter, your faith has made you whole." Now, the other folks were touching him, but they were not touching with intentionality. And you have to be intentional in what you touch Jesus about. When you touch him with intentionality, that I am touching him. And let me tell you here, what really happened, because it is the second means by which we release faith, it is called desperation. Desperation. Do you notice that this woman was a desperate woman, because the Bible says that she had suffered many things from many physicians? Whenever you suffer, you become desperate. Suffering makes us desperate. And she had spent all that she had and was no better. Can you imagine to be suffering and broke? You're talking about desperation. See, when she touched him, if I don't get healed through this touch, I don't have any other money to go. I don't have an insurance card. If I don't get it from this, because I'm suffering right now, and I have spent everything that I've got on stuff that never has satisfied me and stopped my hurt. What do I do? When you find a woman that has suffered for many years and she's bleeding, a woman with an issue of blood, and let me just tell you that this issue of blood flowed forth from a very personal place with her. It is a place of where intimate relations go on. And what is it to be sick in the intimate relations of your life, and you've spent your money on them and you're suffering? Broke, busted, and disgusted, suffering, it makes you desperate. Well, I don't have anything else now, and I've got to get something out of this touch. When I touch him now, I'm touching him with everything that I've got. I'm touching expecting to be made whole. I'm not doing anything trying to be religious because I've seen somebody else do it. I'm not trying to follow a form or fashion. I'm touching him because, God, I'm so desperate. I am so desperate. I've got to have you. Let me tell you, God does not answer prayer. God answers desperate prayer. And when the people of God really get desperate, when they really get desperate, I mean where you don't have another alternative, when you can't afford another attorney to be able to get you out of this legal mess, and you got to touch heaven now in order to have something to happen. When that touch comes into your life, my God, you will activate the power of God in another dimension, and nobody will be able to stop the flow of power from coming into your life. When you touch with intentionality, because all of your other options have run out. When you realize that either I've got to do it, and see, I've seen it in other countries around the world where they don't have access to the insurance that we have here in America, and great doctors and all of this kind of thing, and the latest and advanced technology with medical equipment and all of the new discoveries in medical, in medicine itself, in just medication. And they don't have those options, and the people are in bad shape. And now, when they come, there's a desperation in their heart. So when they come and touch you, and they'll come with a faith already charged in them. And I've just had them to just come up to me after I've spoken and just take my hand and lay it on their heads, and they're believing God that, Lord, I just need a point of contact here, and I'm getting ready because I'm desperate for you, God. I'm desperate for you. I'm not looking for a human being. I'm desperate for you. I can tell when individuals touch with intentionality because they are desperate. If you ever get desperate, if you ever get really desperate, well, I have tried everything that I know. I don't have another ace in that I can pull out. I've shown my whole hand now. I don't have anything else that'll work. I'm desperate. I am desperate because I've spent everything that I've had now, and I haven't gotten better, but I've actually grown worse. And now, Lord, you are my last resort. I'm desperate now. I've got to have you to do it, because if you don't do this, there's nobody else who can help me. I am desperate for you.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.